Hello, everyone, and welcome to another, or should I say, the final episode of this season of The Real Steel. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Polt. And let's put it pretty bluntly here. Polt, the Steelers lose to the Baltimore Ravens in the Wildcard game that we had this week, knocking them out of the playoffs for the sixth time in a row. And I would say this was in very Steelers-esque fashion, at least with the way we ended the season. I don't know if that's the best way to put it, but that's kind of where I am right now. What say you?
Yeah, I thought my audio for the episode last week was going to be the worst thing that the Steelers fan had to deal with, but that just wasn't the case.
I
Man,
wish.
people who had to watch this had to deal with a lot worse than that. And yeah, it was a pretty big low. Just to put it bluntly, it was pretty embarrassing. And being there, I felt even more embarrassed. So boots on the ground, it did not look any better.
That's
So
right. You were there. I didn't even
yeah, I was
fathom to
there.
think about what that would have been like, especially with your turds of friends that took your phone and texted me talking shit. And
Yeah, it was kind of. I mean, I had fun because you're gonna try to have fun, but I got myself all riled up before the game, thinking that we actually had a chance to at least keep it close.
Mhm.
And yeah, we ultimately did not do that, and we came out flat like we always do in the playoffs. And here we are, another first round exit, and we are in purgatory and stuck in literal mediocrity hell.
Yeah, down early in the game, right? Like we have been in all of our other games. I think I saw something that said we didn't cross midfield in the entire first half. Um,
Yeah, crazy.
Score maybe doesn't look that bad, 28-14, but we just couldn't do anything. The Baltimore Ravens were the better team, and they were definitely
Absolutely.
coached better in this game. Steelers really just didn't look like they had a lot of fight in them, to be honest. And one thing that stands out to me, Polt, is sitting there. I didn't yell at my TV, but I spoke to my TV when Kirk Herbstreit said something along the lines of, "This team has no fight. If I'm a Steelers fan right now, I'm really frustrated for reasons A, B, and C." And I said, "Kirk, don't make me not like you right now because you don't even know half of it." And it was just so true, right? Like
But he's right. Yeah.
the team had no fight. We looked like we just, walked out of the JV locker room like not even prepared to play. Guys were giving up on plays. There were probably five guys, at least by my count, five guys that seemed like they were giving 100% effort that game. And,
Yeah.
it was Peyton Wilson and Cam Hayward and maybe a couple others. Um, but the whole team flat, like you said, and just disappointing to watch, right? Because it was, I hate to say it was expected, but we kind of talked about what we thought was ultimately going to happen. And I know you picked, the Steelers to win, but you picked the Steelers to win every game. I think deep down you knew it probably wasn't going to happen.
Yeah.
And here we are. The Steelers are 10-7 in the regular season, another wild card, lost in the first round. And here we are sitting again at the table trying to figure out what do we need to change for future years, knowing that our head coach position isn't going to change, and that's the one thing that's been constant this whole time. So admittedly, there's a lot of frustration on my end. There's probably a lot of frustration on, Steelers fans' end too.
Yeah, I mean, and this game started as bad as it could have. We pinned them on the 5 yard line, their first drive of the game. Actually, a pretty good punt, 60-yard punt by Corliss Waitman. And what do? We give up a 13
95
play,
yards.
95-yard touchdown drive to start the game. And right there, I mean, basically you could have said game was over there. I mean, I will say in the second half they did fight, put up two touchdowns, including a 98-yard touchdown drive. And they did make it I think a two-score game. Yeah, it was two-score because that's what it ended up. And they had opportunities to get off
They
the
sure did.
field and score and make it a one-score game. And, at one point in the second half, I kept saying, I mean, they're not going to win, but, like, if they score one more, it's a one-score game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that far to reach, but in typical Steelers fashion, as it happened a couple times towards the end of the year here, we gave up a 10-play, 6-minute drive to
Yep.
end the game. And yeah, it was pretty frustrating. The lack of effort and the lack of I guess effort, just effort by especially the defensive players, I thought was really embarrassing, and pretty terrible to watch. And you're right, Cam Hayward played his butt off. Peyton Wilson, I think I'd even say Patrick Queen played his
Yeah.
butt off for the circumstances, considering we found out that, he
He had
had
the flu.
4 IV bags before the game. And I think it's even better because after the game, he was hugging all the Ravens, including Lamar Jackson, who is known to have a bad immune system. So I don't know if that was on purpose, but I really hope it was because that would have been really funny. But yeah, just in general, everything was just crap, absolute crap.
It felt like the common story of too little, too late, where we get down in some of these games, and there's that little bit that happens, like that. What happened for the Steelers in the third quarter. If I go back to kind of the play by play here, and I find
Yeah.
where the third quarter started, um, we forced the Ravens to punt. We're down 21-0, but we forced the Ravens to punt, and then we put together that 98-yard touchdown drive, and all of a sudden it's a 21-7 game, which is, not that optimistic, but you're like, wow, we
Yeah.
just did that. Why couldn't we have done that? We just stopped the Ravens on the opening possession,
Right.
make a few more stops, score a few more touchdowns, and we can get, within one score.
Well, and the next drive started with a sack by Highsmith, and it's
That's
like,
right.
okay, maybe we actually have a chance here.
That's right. And then they, I think, converted on a 2nd and 20 for 20-some yards.
21 yards, and then a 15-yard pass to Steven Sims, no less, and then a 44-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry where the entire defense didn't even try.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to go play by play on this game. I don't know if we need to
No.
really dig into the box score. Maybe we can talk a little bit. To be honest with you, I didn't really even think of a Balls of Steel or a Jag off for this game. I probably have them for the season. We could probably sift through and figure out who gets what. But I think overall, like you said, it felt like it was just a poor performance and outcoached yet again. And tough, man, tough.
I think it's definitely worth looking into the box score for to look at one thing or a couple things here. I mean, I think it is really important to say that they rushed the ball 50 times for 299 yards. That the Pittsburgh Steelers gave up 299 rushing yards. That's just like unheard of, and something that teams of the past, teams we've grown up on, teams that we've loved would never give up that. Like that should be embarrassing. And Deshaun Elliott actually after the game said that's just unacceptable and absolutely embarrassing. I know they have Derrick Henry, but giving up 186 to him, giving up 81 to Lamar Jackson, it looked like they didn't even know how to defend the read option, even though they've played Lamar Jackson how many times now, and they've played all these running quarterbacks. They just came in without a game plan and without I don't know, without a will to play. And then to be 10 of 15 or allow the Ravens to be 10 of 15 on third downs is just pretty bad too, because they had them in some third and longs and they just couldn't get off the field, whether it was letting Lamar scramble or it was a read option or if it was just giving up a 21-yard pass on a 2nd and 20. I know that's second down, but just like little things like that was tough. And the Ravens had another fumble that we didn't get. And yeah, it's pretty much all she wrote. They only had 165 passing yards because they didn't have to really throw the ball. Lamar only threw the ball. He was 16 to 21 for 175, 2 touchdowns. I mean, they didn't really have to do much through the air, and I think that's the hardest part to swallow is us giving up 299 rushing yards. That's not acceptable.
Yeah, and even worse, compare that to the Steelers rushing total, which was 11 carries for 29 yards.
And we're supposed to be the team that comes in and dominates in the running game. Oh, that's what we want to be. Yeah.
We got totally demolished. Again, this is another story of 2-1 time of possession. Ravens had the ball for almost 40 minutes. We had the ball for just over 20 minutes. You mentioned that difference in terms of rushing and passing, but the Steelers had 11 first downs in this whole game. The Ravens had 29.
Yeah, crazy.
We ran 45 plays. The Ravens ran 72. 280 total yards for the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Ravens had 464. So they had over 180 more than we did. So that's what, like 60, 70% more than we did. Pathetic, man. Just really, really rough to watch. These Steeler games have not been fun to watch as of late. It sucks to roll into the postseason on such a negative note. Would things have been different had we beat the Bengals the last week of the season? Could they have been? Maybe, but it's not like we would have.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's not like we won that game really convincingly, right? And yeah, the Texans won their game against the Chargers and they weren't favored too. So I'm not really even thinking in that lens. I'm just thinking of had we beaten the Bengals, would that have given us a little bit more momentum in our
Yeah.
game? And I don't even know if it would have.
No, I really don't think it. The way they came out, the way they play. I mean, this isn't. We can get into the history. We don't have to yet, but I mean, no, I don't think it would have made a difference. Obviously, because they came in without a game plan. They came in with bad coaching, and they just came in without a will. And I mean, maybe it would have turned the tides and helped the morale in the locker room, but I don't know if I necessarily would have expected that out of these guys. So yeah, it's a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas, but ultimately they came out and got flat out embarrassed.
Yeah. Where do you want to go with this? Do you want to give a balls? Do you want to give a jag off? Do you want to dive into the history? What's your take?
I mean, there's a lot of jag-offs to go around. I think the entire defense deserves a jag-off, to be honest with you. 299 rushing yards. And just a lot. I mean, the number of plays you can see where you see guys just not trying, whether it's the Dante Jackson, Minka Fitzpatrick's holding up I think it was a receiver, and Dante Jackson's just standing there watching, doesn't even try to help him. There was no gang tackling, whether it's the 44-yard touchdown run by Derrick Henry, where literally the entire set defense is just chasing him, and like, if that, I mean, I think there's just tons of stuff. If I had to give a jag out, if it would be the entire defense, and honestly, the game plan on top of that, because they completely changed what they do against running quarterbacks. They completely changed what they do against the Ravens, and it hurt them. And I don't know why they were successful against them. Have been all year. Have been in the years past. I don't know why they changed it up, and they outsmarted themselves, or I don't even know if you could call it smart. So yeah, I'd give it the jag off. The ball's a steals hard. I don't. Russ actually played a pretty good game somehow.
In the second half.
In
I
the
mean,
second half,
his stats show it. Yeah,
right?
but
No, I mean, yeah, his first half was horrible, and he missed a lot of throws and was a statue in the park pocket. Um, but yeah, I don't really have anybody to give a
yeah,
balls of steel
I'd
to.
I'd I'd maybe I would maybe give a balls of steel here to Cam Hayward.
Yeah, he
I know
tried
you
it.
said
Yeah,
I know you said the defense looked like dog shit, but Cam Hayward to the point where he got hurt in some capacity and was legitimately ruled out by the analysts on TV, and then you see him running back from the locker room with his helmet in hand and came in and played later.
yeah,
Cam Hayward is one of the few guys out here who I think really gave his whole heart in this game. And so, despite maybe the lack of production, I wouldn't even say that he was third in the team in tackles, two of them tackles for loss.
yeah,
Cam had a pretty decent game, and it felt like he was all over the place, given a full effort. I think he's deserving at least of a kind of a finale balls of steel here for this last game. I hate to be a little bit of a cop out and give a jag off to Mike Tomlin, but that's what I would do. I think it goes,
yeah.
with the game plan. It goes with the prep of the team. He talked all week and is still talking about this baggage that he carries, and now how it's not reflective of anyone else but him, and his shoulders are big enough that he can carry it, and he shines and smiles in the face of adversity and all that bullshit. And it's the same thing time after time, and
Yeah.
nothing has changed. And I think I went on a rant earlier with you when we were texting back and forth, and to me I feel like the game has kind of just lapped Mike Tomlin a little bit. I think that what he's trying to do, whether it's being a player's coach or appeasing to these guys or whatever it might be, and I just don't see how you can be this coach that everyone wants to play for and says you're such a good coach, but you don't get any results. That's to where I'm stuck with this whole thing. And ultimately at the end of the day, you can chalk up this loss to a lot of different things, whether it's certain players, whether it's certain coordinators, play calling, execution, whatever it might be. But to me, honestly, at the end of the day, it falls to whoever's at the top, and that's Mike Tomlin. And so he's my jag for this week, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very fair. He's been the one constant throughout this entire drought, I guess you could call it, and all these struggles. And he's the one constant. We've had offensive coordinators, we've had defensive coordinators, we've had different players, we've had tons of quarterbacks, and all of it comes back to him. And you can look at all the historical stats. I mean, 6 straight playoff games, allowing 230 total points or 38 points per game it is crazy. Getting out to these horrible deficits. They're being outscored 73-0 in the first quarter of the last 6 playoff games. That's terrible. They haven't scored. I mean, it's just they haven't scored points. Like it's just like the last 5 games of the season, they were outscored 47-3. I mean, it's just like I don't know what they're doing in the locker room. I don't know what he's doing to get them ready, but like you said, all the players are still supporting him, and I just don't understand it. I don't think or I can't say there aren't. I think there are very few people who are out there, at least not within the organization or within the team, that are still supporting Mike Tomlin. And I know neither of us are one of them. It's just been too many years of mediocrity. He's out of 25 head coaches with 15 plus playoff appearances.
23rd.
He's 23rd. I mean, it's just like so many of these things that he's just like, it's just the same thing year after year after year. Yeah, he doesn't have a losing record, but what happens? They peter out at the end of the year and then get blown out in the first round of the playoffs. And that's just not what the Pittsburgh Steelers organization is supposed to stand for, but that's what we're accepting.
Listen, we can go into all these stats about Mike Tomlin. They're terrible. And you mentioned that one of him being 23rd out of 25 qualifying coaches with 15 plus playoff games. I think the one common thing that's going around right now is kind of like the comparison of all the things that have happened in the time that Mike Tomlin has been a head coach, right? Like here's one with Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson got a job. He won a Super Bowl. He was fired. He was hired. He won a playoff game with Jacksonville, and then he was fired again. I've seen it with him. I've seen it with Mike McCarthy. I've seen it with a whole bunch of other coaches in terms of their tenure, what they've been able to do. And then when teams let them go, I really think, if I'm like speaking with my heart here, being a fan of this team, Mike Tomlin is not a bad coach. Mike Tomlin is a great football coach. He's a great head football coach. He's done good things for the city of Pittsburgh. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't hate Mike Tomlin. I don't despise the guy, and I don't think he's a bad coach. But I think there comes a time when things run their course. And quite frankly, I think our course, we're going to pivot here into the get rid of Mike Tomlin chat, which won't happen, by the way. We know that's not going to happen. And we weren't expecting it to happen. So that's also part of this too. But I think we need to look in the mirror as a fan base and just say, if you fire a head coach, it's not because you hate the guy or because, you think he's a bad dude or wasn't a good coach in the past. It's just reflective of what's going on right now. And I'm sick and tired of the question of, okay, if we fire Tomlin, then who else do we get? Because you look, there's a ton of guys that come into the NFL, ton of new coaches, new coordinators that come in and do things that, no one really expects out of them. So the question of, if we get rid of Mike Tomlin, who's better? Or, if we get rid of Mike Tomlin, we have a couple bad years ahead of us. If that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. Because what happens is when you're a 500 team and you make the playoffs and you lose in the first round every year, you're picked 16 to 23 every single year, whatever it might be. And the challenge with that is that you can never get some of those best players. Like I heard Pat McAfee say that Mike Tomlin was saying something about Chase Young. He said, right to Chase Young's face, we can never get a guy like you because we'll never be able to draft high enough. What was the last top 10 pick we had? Devin Bush, and we traded up for that. It's just really, it's a tough spot to be in as a fan because we are a spoiled and a blessed fan base to have had the amount of success that we do. And, people say it would be great to watch a team that wins consistently, but it doesn't matter when you can't win where it matters. So that's kind of where I am. I would love to see the Steelers in some capacity move on from Mike Tomlin. We know it's not going to happen this year. I don't know if it will ever happen, quite honestly. But
and I mean, you could go back and say our big calling card, right, is 3 coaches in tons of years. I don't even want to do the math, but like a lot of years, like 50 years, basically, we've had 3 head coaches. I think more than 50. And you could say like, we want to keep the consistency. We want to keep that same message in the locker room. Well, nobody's had like Bill Cowher and Chuck Noll did not have this kind of like failures. Chuck Noll coached 23 years and never went more than 4 years without a playoff win. Bill Cowher coached 15 years and never went more than 3 years without a playoff win.
Hmm.
Tomlin's in his 18th year, just coached his 18th, and he has 8 consecutive years without a playoff win. I mean, it's. I get that we want to keep the same guys and we want to keep the consistency, but when it's not working, it's not working, and at some point you got to say enough is enough. And Art Rooney II, yet last year said that he wanted to win playoff games, and this wasn't okay, and this wasn't the standard, blah blah blah. And what did he do? He let Tomlin come back. Same thing's happening, and Tomlin's still coaching after a year more of it. I mean, I just think there's no accountability in that building from the very top. From the
Hmm.
very top, from the ownership level. I don't think Art Rooney's invested enough. I don't think he really cares, or I mean, maybe he cares, but he doesn't understand or doesn't want to make the move to get rid of a guy like Mike Tomlin. I don't think Omar Khan even has the ability to do that because I think Mike Tomlin outranks him. And,
Yeah.
and and so then you go into the locker room and it's like, well, Mike Tomlin's the guy. He's the leadership from the top. Well, then who are the player leaders? Well, Cam Hayward and T.J. Watt are the main guys. But again, they don't outrank Mike Tomlin, and there's no accountability in the locker room either. Some of these guys just aren't trying. And when Cam Hayward, Deshaun Elliott, after that one game, a couple of games ago, are saying that one guy's not doing what they're supposed to do. I think after the Chiefs game, talk about Cam Sutton. Like you can't allow that to happen. Last week you heard in the locker room guys saying that stuff in the media was getting into the locker room and getting into people's head. What kind of locker room is this? What kind of building is this that we're allowing professional athletes are allowing media and social media to drive how they feel and their real feelings and then get hurt about it and like not come out and try? Like I just don't get it. And there's no repercussion for their actions. And I think that all starts with Mike Tomlin. Whether it's George Pickens showing up late on Christmas, whether it's guys not trying, whether it's guys making business decisions in playoff games. I mean, that all starts at the top, and then Mike Tomlin is the main guy with that. And I agree, he's not a bad coach, but he's run stale in Pittsburgh, and his messaging's not working. He's been lapped by the NFL twofold, threefold, and
Hmm.
just his message, his ideology, his whole thought process just isn't going to work. And I don't think it's ever going to work in Pittsburgh again, unfortunately. And until Art Rooney's willing to make a decision to move on, which might never happen, we're stuck where we are, and we're in mediocrity.
I think that's just it. I think his time has run stale. You put it very eloquently there. And yeah, I think, it's easy for us to say it's time to move on. It's easy for the fan base to say that when we know that's not going to happen. But I think that's, truly what needs to happen. And if it doesn't, I mean, it's not going to, but like,
No.
what are the concrete steps that we can take? I mean, I really do think from a coordinator perspective, whatever some of this change that happens within the organization, it should be made independent of Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin should not have
Yep.
his hands in choosing who our coordinators are going to be or whatever it is, right? Like Omar Khan should be able to get in there and make those decisions. Maybe have Rooney weigh in, who knows? But I think like from a coordinator, a coaching, a staff perspective, like Mike Tomlin's hands are way too intermingled in this stuff, and I
Yeah.
think it's like poisoning the organization, honestly. Like I think we need an independent. If we're going to keep Mike Tomlin as our head coach, we need to do a separate thing outside of him, and we need to have a defensive coordinator who's going to be able to be the defensive coordinator, and
Yep.
probably the same thing with offense.
I mean, think about it. How many coordinators have we gone through? How many coaches have we gone through that Mike Tomlin personally hired and they were garbage?
Yeah.
Whether it was after Todd Haley because they didn't get along, we bring in what Randy Fichtner,
Fichtner.
and then Matt Canada, and now Arthur
Mhm.
Smith. Defensively, they got once Dick LeBeau left and went to Keith Butler, who again Tomlin was in charge of, and then it went to Terrell Austin. I mean, it's just these guys that he can manipulate and he has all of the control over. And you're
Letting
right.
Brian Flores walk away.
Right,
And
letting Brian Flores walk away because he didn't want Brian Flores to, I mean, I don't know what the reasoning was, but it probably had something to do with he didn't want to have that second voice in the locker room, like trying to take control. But I don't think it's a bad thing, and I think that's where I
yeah,
100% agree. Mike Tomlin cannot be the sole decision maker in all this, but it sounds like he's the sole decision maker in not only the coaching staff, but also the player personnel and everything. It sounds like he makes all of the decisions, almost like a Bill Belichick type of what he did in New England. And Belichick did it well, did it successfully. They won 6 Super Bowls, or five, however many they won. We haven't won any in a long time. And I mean, the easiest comparison is this is Andy Reid in Philadelphia.
yeah.
Andy Reid, I don't think anybody in Philadelphia thought Andy Reid was a bad coach. I think they're in the same situation. They thought he was a good coach, but it had run stale, and they moved on. And look, Andy Reid's doing great in Kansas City, and the Eagles have won a Super Bowl since they lost him. And I think both can be true. You can get rid of Mike Tomlin and still be successful, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen. At least for another year.
I'm with you 100%. I don't have too much more to say about that. I'm at this point where I know that the Steelers are not getting rid of Mike Tomlin, and that is high on my wish list for what I think this team needs.
Yeah.
I am fearful going into next season, knowing that it's going to be the same type of thing. Like what could happen that could actually make me think things are going to change? I don't know. I don't have it. I don't know if there's an answer.
Well, it's tough too because it's the same. I mean, and to give Mike Tomlin a little bit of credit, he is very good at not answering questions directly and just saying, the blanket BS that will get him by until the next year. I mean, his press conference today was the same old thing we hear every year. Well, this isn't okay. There's going to be big changes, top to bottom, players, staff, blah, blah, blah. But what does that actually mean? And to your point, even if they make changes on the staff, even if they bring in a different coordinator, are they going to actually be able to do their own thing? Like, I personally don't believe Arthur Smith was allowed to be an offensive coordinator like independently. I know he sucked this year, but I think there was a lot of sway and a lot of influence there from Mike Tomlin on how to call the games and what to do. We've seen him be better at it in Tennessee than he was there. I know he struggled in Atlanta, but he was the head coach too, so you could argue that was part of the problem. But I don't think he was given an opportunity. I don't know if Tara Austin even comes up with the game plans defensively. I have no idea, and until he could take a step back and let his coaches that he hires do their job, yeah, we're kind of, I don't even know how we see optimism, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we're going to fix the Pittsburgh Steelers,
We're going to try.
We're going to try. We're going to role play a little bit. And we talked about this briefly, but we didn't tell each other what we were going to do. But we agreed that I'm going to look at the offense.
Yeah.
You're going to look at the defense. We are going to, from a reasonable perspective, think about what the Steelers should do and likely, I don't know if I would say likely would do, but likely could do, feasibly could do to address, the current situation of the Steelers. And we put some ground rules in place. We said, hey, if you're looking at defense poll, you don't get all the draft picks. You don't get to fire everyone, whatever. We said you can fire one coach. You can get rid of one person. You can make one big free agent signing, but you can't sign 10 guys. You can make one big free agent signing. And then we said for the draft, you take the odd numbered picks and I'll take the even picks. Now, Steelers draft picks are a little bit different this year. We have 8 total. We have 3 7th-round picks and no 6th-round picks. So what that does is you'll get the 1st-round pick, the 3rd-round pick, the 5th-round pick, and 1 7th. And I get the 2nd, 4th, and 2 7ths. And so we chatted a little bit. This is kind of a little fun game, I guess, or exercise we could do to make this a little bit more lighthearted in terms of what we could do to address the Steelers. So
I will say it did make me feel a little bit better. Like like thinking it through and saying maybe there is some things we could do to have a little optimism, whether I feel that way or not. But I thought this was fun, so maybe for the listeners they'll enjoy it too.
Yeah. Now, will it give us the hope that we need to actually think that something different is going to happen? Probably not. But
it's still fun.
We can all dream. It was a little fun. Before we go there, was there anything else we wanted to cover? I know we're not really going to go into kind of season stats. We can maybe do that at a later time if we want to. Do you want to give a kind of an end of the season jag or balls or anything else you want to do to kind of tie a bow on this before we look forward?
Yes. We do have to mention that we haven't led in our last 5 football games, and this is only the 3 times in Steelers history, which was started in 1933 as that happened. 1938, 1969, and 2024 have we gone 5 straight games without a lead. So pretty bad end of the season, and that's where these rants, this change exercise is really coming into play because there are big needs for change. All right, I'll give a season balls of steel, and I'm going to give it to probably, in my opinion, I know you might have another opinion, but I think the most deserving guy who I think is getting overlooked nationally, but he did get an All-Pro, so good for him. Cam Hayward, I think, deserves it.
Nice.
The guy was a stud. Hold on, wasn't even prepared for his stats, but his stats were unbelievable. I think. Let's see, 71 tackles, 12 tackles for losses, 20 QB hits, 8 sacks. I mean, he's 11 passes defended as a defensive lineman. Played every game, played almost every snap. He's a first-team All-Pro, Pro Bowler. Unbelievable year that's getting overlooked. It's one of the better defensive tackle years in football in recent years, and at the age of 35, especially after this past offseason being written off and a lot of people saying he's too old, we shouldn't sign him back, get rid of him, let him retire. It's impressive that he came out and did what he did, and he is the epitome of a Steeler, and he fits the old mantra, and he's the only thing tying us to the old Steelers team. So glad to see him have a great year.
I love that, and I feel quite bad for him. Just kind of the circumstances that guy deserves to win more than anyone else on our roster. And so I really like that pick, and I stand by it, and I will back you with it. You know where mine's going. I'm only doing it just because
It's deserved too.
I think, other than Cam Hayward, I think this is the other guy that should have been our team's MVP. And no shade to TJ Watt, although quite quiet in his last few games, which is a little bit disappointing. No stats. But nonetheless, TJ Watt's still a good player for the Steelers for this season, and very important to our team. But my season balls of steel is going to a guy who probably won it maybe 5 or 6 times throughout the season for me, Chris Boswell. 41 of 44 on the season for field goal attempts. Didn't make that record, but that's probably because we didn't score very many points at all in our last few games. 93% on the season in terms of his field goals. 13 of 15, by the way, from 50 plus. Unrivaled in terms of the accuracy that we have in this guy. Long on the year, a 57-yard field goal. By the way, 35 of 35 for extra points to not miss, I think is pretty big, given that this has now become a 30-odd yard field goal for an extra point. And every now and then we see, good kickers miss some of these extra points. So, Chris Boswell, incredible consistency. Also, I think 1 punt on the season, stepped in early in the first part of the season when Cameron Johnson went down. Chris Boswell just had a phenomenal season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was our leading scorer. I think he was the NFL's leading scorer, and bummed that he didn't get to the record, but All-Pro, Pro Bowl, got his accolades, and deservingly so.
And you know what? He's so deserving because he single-handedly won us 2 games.
Yeah, I agree.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you this. We'll get into it a little bit because we're going to talk about the offense here. If the Steelers, if we don't sign Najee's my only active Steelers jersey player that I have right now. I'm getting a number 9 jersey next year. You better believe it, man. And I am. That's what I'm going to do. That's definitely what I'm going to do. So, in fact, I might even get it if we do re-sign Najee. So maybe we'll go there. But man, I can't help but root for this team in my heart and be such a fan when I'm pissed off at them.
It sucks.
So let me go into a jag off of the year on the season, and then I'll transition to you, and then we can kind of do our little bit of a rundown. This guy didn't have a terrible season by any means for the Pittsburgh Steelers, who I'm going to give my jag off to, but I think there were a lot of pieces that came into what ultimately made me give him this award, and it's George Pickens. I am over this drama diva stuff that we have at wide receiver, and to have your players and your coaches and everyone need to come console you after every single thing that happens. Lots of penalties that we saw from George Pickens. Here's his year-end stats, which again are not bad, but have you looked at his stats?
I'm looking at him right now.
Okay, because I was going to have you guess on something, but you see it, so never mind. George Pickens had 3 touchdowns on the year.
Yeah, that's surprising
3.
to me.
It's pretty shitty. 3 touchdowns. He had 59 catches for 900 yards. The craziest part to me is he had 103 targets. Now, I think that targets obviously is a function of your quarterback inevitably.
Yeah.
But that's like almost half of the balls that were thrown to him he didn't catch.
And at the end of the year, think about it. Which game was it? The Chiefs game, he had one catch the Bengals game. He had like 7 targets and one catch, and he dropped like 4 of them.
Yeah, like that's not good, dude. Like
Yeah.
he's getting my balls of steel for, I guess if I had to summarize his
Jagoff.
Sorry, Jagoff.
Okay.
He's getting my Jagoff of the season. If I had to summarize, it would be number 1 for his maturity level and his attitude. Number 2 would be for extremely underwhelming based on what I expected. Very well below expectations.
That's
I
fair.
think we at the beginning of the season, when I bet I put like $5 or $10 on stuff. Like I'm a small bettor.
Yeah.
And I do that on a lot of different stuff. If I feel really good about something or I feel pretty good about it, maybe I'll throw $20 on it. Maybe. I probably could have and would have thrown like $50 or $100 on George Pickens over 1,000 yards for the season. Like,
Yeah, me too.
I could have like, yeah, I would have bet a lot on that to tell you that was going to happen. I didn't do any futures bets. So if anyone comes at me and says, why didn't you do it? You're saying you would have. I didn't bet anything futures, but I would have taken that in a heartbeat, and I would have been so confident, and I would have told 20 people to do it. And it didn't hit. And I just 3 touchdowns, 900 yards, really disappointing. So yeah, I'm a little bit over George Pickens. I'll get into it whenever I break down the offense in a little bit, but that's who my Jag is for the year.
Yeah, I struggled on a Jag for the year. It's hard to pinpoint one guy, in my opinion, with all of the mistakes. And I thought about going defense, but I think there's too many or two. I just couldn't do one guy. I thought about Dante
Jackson. You can't give it to the
Jackson.
whole defense. You can't.
I thought it was Dante Jackson because that dude was either hurt, getting run by, not running after guys, not making plays, lack of effort for a lot of the season, which really made me consider doing him. But he did have 5 interceptions, and when we didn't have him, we did struggle. So I can't give it to him. I'm going to give it to, and this is a little bit more than just him, but I'm going to give it to Van Jefferson.
Okay.
And it's not just Van Jefferson's fault. It's also the fact that this team thought with our offense that going in with Van Jefferson as our second receiver was going to be a good thing for this team. And the fact that he wasn't even able to hold the second receiver, that Calvin Austin far and away passed him as the second receiver throughout the year. And Van Jefferson's stats are so pedestrian. 24 catches on 40 targets for 276 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that is our number 2 receiver. And he had 24 catches for under 300 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he played first receiver, second receiver type snaps for us.
He did.
And that's all he could muster. And I don't know if it's necessarily his fault. The situation he was put in was horrible, and maybe they didn't help him out very much. But yeah, for the fact that we went with Van Jefferson as our wide receiver 2, and this is how it turned out, that's where I got to go with my Jagoff.
It's a good pick. He was also silent. Like he was a very he was a forgotten personality on this team, right? Like I don't think I saw like any interviews with him, like no locker room stuff which I guess in some sense is a good thing, given I was just talking about George Pickens and attitude and things like that. But I think he was absent on and off the field. So
yeah,
it's a good pick. So. Good pick.
Hey, before we move to our things, are you going to talk about Mike Williams at all?
No, but you know what I was going to talk about? The fact that my bold prediction last week was right because the Steelers didn't run any toss plays. Can you believe it?
That's crazy. Yeah, that's the one thing we can hang our hats on. That was a great bold prediction. Mine was horrendous.
And Justin Fields got in for like 4 snaps or something. So
he did. Yeah. No, you had a good one last week.
All right. What was yours?
I just wanted to mention, like, when like kind of on the Van Jefferson thing, we said we needed a wide receiver. We traded for a wide receiver, Mike Williams. And to be honest with you, he actually played really well when given the opportunity. He only had
Sure did.
13 targets, but he had 9 catches for 132 yards, an average of 14.7 yards per catch, and a touchdown. I mean, the guy made plays when he was given the opportunity, but he was never given the opportunity. And this just goes back into, and maybe you'll talk about this in some of your decision making with the offense, but it goes into just how bad our coaching was and how much we misused the roster. Corey Trice being a healthy scratch in that playoff game is mind boggling to me after he had an unbelievable week 18. So I just wanted to bring that up, and that might lead you into your offensive moves. But
Yeah.
Mike Williams could have been the guy.
I think so too. And it was a great point too, because on December 10th, they asked if, are we going to see more of Mike Williams? What's he going to do to this wide receiver room? And Mike Tomlin said, keep watching. Mike Williams played 9 snaps against the Ravens, 9 snaps. They never played him. And I think I'm not going to say he's a supreme talent, but he's a great wide receiver. I think certainly better than Van Jefferson. Mike Tomlin, we know is loyal to a fault. And, that's part of the problem here, and it's probably part of the problem with the players and the coaches and all that fun stuff. So, good call. Good to bring up.
All right, I'm good.
Do you want me to go first with offense, or do you want to? Offense is a little more flashy. What do you want to do?
I'm not real flashy here. I can go first if you want.
I think you should go first, because I think you'll probably have a little bit more rebuttal or maybe things to talk about from an offensive perspective.
Okay.
You're wearing a Bee House shirt right now.
Yeah, I'm wearing Shout Out Beans, wearing my Bee House shirt.
All right, Bee House.
Yeah. All right. I'll try to fix the defense here, and unfortunately, with the highest paid defense, there's still a ton of holes. And right now, I have a 12-step plan that I wrote out, and here's how it goes. Number 1, I fired Terrell Austin. That is my one firing.
DC, gone, right out the door.
Get him out of here. Get him out of here. The philosophy, again, I don't know. We'll talk about it in a second. But some of the decision-making, like I said, Corey Trice being a healthy scratch, Preston Smith being a healthy scratch, them playing Corey Trice man-to-man on Jamar Chase, them not putting Joey Porter Jr., it's just, there's so many. I'll get into that in a minute. So fire him. Number 2 is what we talked about earlier. Allow someone other than Mike Tomlin to make the decision. That is key here, because if it's just you're bringing a figurehead and Mike Tomlin's going to keep making the decisions to play game plans, all of that, then this is all for wash and it doesn't mean crap. So that's number 2. Number 3.
Did you pick any have any prospective guys, or just generally speaking? Okay.
Number 3. That was generally number 3, and this is kind of plays into number 2. I hire a defensive coordinator that has his own voice. And I kind of looked at guys that had previous head coaching experience or are really well-respected defensive coordinators. So I said Matt Eberflus, Robert Saleh. They both struggled as head coaches, but they were really good defensive coordinators when they were defensive coordinators. Then I said other guys that might
both out of jobs right now, by the way.
Both out of jobs, both available. Very reasonable. Wink Martindale. Another guy. He's played in this. He's been in this division for a long time. He's had success in the NFL. I know he kind of went, stale, but he played. He was at Michigan this year, as their DC, and he did a good job with not as much talent as they had the year before. I think Wink maybe getting another chance would be good. And here's the last one, which I actually think is kind of interesting. Lou Anarumo, the Bengals ex-DC, the guy when he had a couple players, had some great game plans and took them to the Super Bowl a few years ago, and he just they didn't have players on the defensive side of the ball this year, which is why he got fired. So those are the 4 guys I'm thinking. Okay. One of these guys can at least be a personality that can rival Mike Tomlin, like Brian Flores would have done. So those are my prospects. Number 4, change the philosophy. I mean, that's what I'm hoping one of these guys would do. It goes into what we were just talking about. Why is Corey Trice playing Jamar Chase one-on-one? Why is Joey Porter Jr. not following Rashad Bateman around the entire game? Zay Flowers didn't play. Why is Joey Porter Jr. not covering him? I don't get it. Let's turn back into Blitzburg. Let's go back to the Dick LeBeau days. We are designed to be that kind of defense. Get pressure, get the ball out quick, make a play with man coverage up in your face. That's the kind of defense we're built as. We just sit back and let people carve us up, and it doesn't make sense. Change the philosophy. That whole playoff game just pissed me off with what they did. They didn't let their ends like T.J. Watt and Alex Highsmith were going after the running back. They used to go after Lamar Jackson every play, and
Yep.
it worked. Now they went after Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and both of them ran all over us. So change the philosophy. We'll get into players now. Number 5, we're letting a lot of guys go. There's a lot of restricted free agents out there, a lot of free agents out there, guys like Dante Jackson, Landon Roberts, DeMonte Casey, Tyler Matakevich as special teams, Cam Sutton, James Pierre. Those are the Isaiah Loudermilk. Those are the big ones. I'm letting Dante Jackson, Cam Sutton, James Pierre, and Isaiah Loudermilk walk. Get them out of here. I don't care for any of them. Dante
Trim
Jackson.
the fat.
Dante Jackson he's getting paid $6 million. I know he played well, but I feel good about Corey Trice as a number 2, and we'll talk more about corner. Cam Sutton, cancer, get him out of here. James Pierre, they already tried to get rid of him and brought him back. Somehow he made his way in here and was a starter. I don't get it. And Isaiah Loudermilk, I think he's a good guy, but he just hasn't done anything for us in recent years. So Isaiah Loudermilk is the last one there. Okay, so now we have some cap casualties here. This would be, I guess, well, this isn't that actually, but then we could also get rid of Preston Smith and Larry Ogunjobi and save $20 million. I think that's worth mentioning. Cole Holcomb for another 6 as well. My 6th step is we actually keep Preston Smith. We want that. I think we need that depth. We always are running into depth issues on the edge. I think keeping Preston Smith, maybe cut him and bring him back for cheaper would be a good way to do it. We have to extend TJ Watt. That's, I think, key to this. He's coming up a year out from his contract being done, which is the Steelers' time to extend. You can't let that guy not be a Steeler the rest of his life. Sign him, and then actually get rid of Larry Ogunjobi. I thought he was useless this year. Didn't really do anything. Keanu Benton had a really good year. He's making $7 million, or we could save $7 million by cutting him. I think it's time to get rid of him. He's either hurt or not doing anything. All right. Number 7. I mentioned the guys that I don't want to keep that are free agents. There's 2 that I do want to keep. I want to keep Landon Roberts.
Yes.
Landon Roberts embodies what the Steelers are. Just like I said about Cam Hayward, Landon Roberts led the team in tackles in that game on Saturday. And he said he wants to be a Steeler. He wants to finish his career as a Steeler. He'll come back cheap. I don't know what we're going to do with Cole Holcomb, but if we don't bring back Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts becomes even more important. So bring back Landon Roberts. My second guy would be DeMonte KZ.
Okay.
I know he wasn't flashy this year, but if they can get him on the cheap, safety depth's not a bad thing, in my opinion. And he has a lot of experience. I thought
Hard hitter,
he played,
knows the system.
I thought he played pretty well, or pretty hard at least the last couple of weeks, and he was played a lot. So I thought KZ's worth bringing back on the cheap.
Plays well with Minka too. So
He does, right. And it gives Deshaun Elliott or Minka the opportunity to play a little bit out of position. And I think that's good for us.
okay.
We good there? You have any
What are we at?
questions so
Nope,
far?
I'm good.
right.
I think a Landon Roberts was glad you kept him.
All right.
You're on
Sorry.
what, step 8 now?
I'm on 8, and sorry, and the last ones will be quick because my
No.
draft ones are quick. But
Take your
number,
time.
number 8 is my splash signing. All right, because I'm only allowed 1, so I have 3 options here.
Okay. Are they
Where does-
all the same position?
2 are the same, 1's different.
Okay.
I'm going to start with the most unrealistic option,
Okay.
and I'm going to go with Milton Williams, defensive tackle. I'm pretty sure he's on the Ravens, I believe. I'm sorry. That was stupid. He's on the Eagles. I knew that. But this guy's 25 years old, going to be 26. Really, really good player. I think he was like top 5 in pass rush win rate as a defensive tackle. I think he was number 3 overall out of all defensive tackles. Really good player. I think he would help beef it up and give us some depth. But I think he's too young and going to be too expensive. We're not going to do it. My defensive tackle, which I think this is the most realistic out of the 3, would be bring back Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I think bring back Javon Hargrave. Again, we need another guy inside. I love Cam Hayward. I love Keanu Benton, but those 2 guys can't be playing the entire game. And when they do, their production goes down. We need some help. Javon Hargrave would help. And he's coming off of a pretty big injury. I don't remember what his injury was, but it was a season-ending injury. So my thought there is he's going to be 31, or he is 31. He is 31. He's going to be cheaper because of that. And he's coming off a season-ending injury. We could probably afford him, and I think he would be a big player for us. So Javon Hargrave, I think, is the most. So that's probably what I'm going to end up at here. But my third option, which I also think is pretty unlikely, is bringing DJ Reed, cornerback for the Jets. Played opposite Sauce Gardner. I think he's a good corner. He's good man to man. He kind of fits what we want to do. I think he would give us that number 2 corner opposite Joey Porter Jr. Maybe
Yeah.
even be number 1, right? And we got a good tandem, and we can play some man to man, and we could do these blitzes and all this crazy stuff. Unfortunately, I don't think DJ Reed's going to be in our price range or come to us, but that would be cool. So my main signing, what I'm going to actually go with is Javon Hargrave. Bring in
Okay.
Javon.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, when I thought about this, and this goes into my 9 through 12, which are my 4 draft picks, we don't have a ton of holes. We just need depth and better players. Like, our edge rushers are really good. We
Mhm.
have a couple good D linemen.
Good
Our
linebacking
linebackers,
core, yeah.
right? Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson are going to be good. Who knows what they do with Cole Holcomb? The safeties, you have Deshaun Elliott and Minka Fitzpatrick. Minka Fitzpatrick might have had a bad year, and you can question his effort in that game, at the playoff game. But he's still a good player. He's an all-pro. Cornerback is our biggest issue. That's why my first-round pick, number 9, is going to be a cornerback. You got to go get a stud cornerback. Quinyon Mitchell, who I think is an all-pro this year as a rookie with the Eagles, was picked in the 20s last year. Cooper DeJean, who has been awesome for them, was picked in the second round, I think. You can get stud corners late in the draft. They're
Joey
not as
Porter
highly
Jr. was
touted.
picked in the first pick of the second round.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Good point. I think you can get a stud corner in this draft. I don't know the draft very well, but I think you can get a stud corner at pick 21. Okay, third round, I'm going another defensive tackle because, again, I think we need depth. Fifth round, I'm going safety because I don't know if they're bringing back DeMonte Casey. And then if you're only stuck with 2, and I think you need some safety depth there. And then seventh round, I would consider another corner. But I think maybe Ryan Watts, the 7th rounder out of Texas, maybe that they think he could be okay. We'll see what they do in free agency. So I really said either safety. No, I meant corner because I already said safety. Corner or edge. Because if we don't bring back Preston Smith, we would need another edge guy as potential depth. And at that point, you're kind of just shooting at the dartboard. So that I think maybe corner or edge. So that's my 12-step plan. The last 4, 9 through 12, were all draft picks. That was a lot, but that's how I would fix the defense.
12 step Poltz. We gotta lock this in. Polt's 12-step plan to fix the Steelers defense.
It's a lot. Maybe it's asking too much, but I don't think it was that unrealistic.
Well, and it's not. You think about what happens in an off season, right? Like 9 through 12, draft picks happen. They're probably going to draft some players like that, fill some of those holes. They're going to make, inevitably, with Omar Khan, we're going to make probably a splash free agent signing. We're probably going to sign some of the guys that we have. We're going to let some of those guys go. I think the biggest thing rides on your first 3 steps to me is do we get rid of Terrell Austin? Do we hire a defensive coordinator without Mike Tomlin's hands in the mix? And is it someone that's actually going to have a voice? I think those are the 3 most unlikely things out of your 12-step plan,
Agreed.
But they could certainly happen.
And as of recording this on Tuesday, the 14th, Terrell Austin's still the defensive coordinator, which nobody thought he'd last this long. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
I love it. You had fun doing that. I can tell.
That was fun. Yeah, I just was sitting watching the terrible Monday night game, and I came up with that. I felt good about it.
I love it. Hopefully you feel the same way about offense. But
all right, let's hear it.
I'll tell you, I did things a little bit differently in terms of I didn't go through, outlining all those steps, but I went by positional group. So cool. I will talk about from a positional perspective who we have in terms of free agents, splash signings, draft picks, and what we do to address each of those. So that's kind of how I approached it. But
how are you starting?
I'm gonna start in the trenches.
Oh, are you firing a coach?
I'm gonna start in the trenches.
All right.
I'm going to start with the offensive line, and the first thing that I'm doing is firing Pat Meyer, our offensive line coach.
Thank you.
I think that this offensive line that we have right now has a ton of talent, and they're young. Something that the Steelers aren't necessarily used to is having a young, very talented offensive line. And I think with that, these guys that we have on our roster right now are raw. And I think they need a good coach, and I don't think Pat Meyer was the right coach for them. And I think that the first thing that needs to happen is we need to let go of our offensive line coach and Pat Meyer and bring someone else in. I didn't go through the depths of scouting out future offensive line coaches. But I think that's something that needs to happen.
I know he's been out of the league. and I know he won't do it, but
Mike Munchak.
I would go give him whatever money he wants and bring in Mike Munchak.
Yeah, I mean it's a possibility, right?
Yeah, my only comment, I'm going to try to just let you go on this and not step in too much.
You're good.
The position, like how many people they play out of position, has to end. Project Jones is not a right tackle. Dan Moore is not a good tackle.
All right. Don't steal my thunder, buddy. Don't steal it.
I'm just saying, like that's where a good coach, could notice that and maybe make some changes. So all right, sorry.
So I agree. Okay, so get rid of Pat Meyer, bring in someone else. Don't know who that is, but it's going to be someone else. Let's talk free agents for a second. Steelers free agents right now at offensive line: James Daniels, guard, who was hurt for the season; Nate Herbig, a guard; Dan Moore, offensive tackle. I probably let Dan Moore go. I think he's going to get – he had a shit year, and I think someone will pay him. And I don't think we should pay him what his market value is going to be. Ran his course with the Steelers, and I think he should be out. Nate Herbig, I really don't – I'm impartial to. I don't know what the Steelers should do. I don't really care. He's a depth piece for us, has been a depth piece. He knows the system. I quite frankly don't know how good he really is at the guard position. I know he's flexible, but I'm impartial to him. Don't really think that what the Steelers do with Nate Herbig is going to be that big of a game changer. What I will try to do is I will try to bring back James Daniels. I think he's a solid guard. I look at what he did with the Bears. He had a really solid playing career with the Bears, I think for about 4 years. And when he was healthy with the Steelers, he was a good player for us. So I would bring back James Daniels if possible. That's who I'm keeping from that free agent list. Now here's what I do. You already stole my thunder, but listen, here's how I restructure our offensive line. And it's not even restructuring it, but look at this. It's simple. You moved Broderick Jones to left tackle. We drafted Broderick Jones to be our perennial left tackle. Broderick Jones was a really good left tackle at Georgia. That's the position that he plays. We move him to left tackle, and you're right. We get rid of this bullshit of playing players in positions that they don't play. You play a right tackle as a left tackle in a game where your left tackle gets hurt and you need depth or something like that happens, right? You move a tackle, you move a guard, whatever you need to do in those particular instances when you're filling the depth roles. To start, Broderick Jones needs to be our left tackle. Now at right tackle, we missed him this entire season, but there's a lot of promise in Troy Fautanu. He's coming back from injury. He said he's going to be ready by OTAs, and I think he's a really good piece. So if we solidify those two as our left and our right tackle respectively, we have Isaac Seumalo at our left guard. Zach Frazier had a hell of a year at center, and Mason McCormick as our right guard. I think that's a really solid offensive line. At depth, you have hopefully James Daniels you bring back. Maybe he challenges for one of those guard positions. You have Spencer Anderson, who's proven to be a really, really versatile player for us. Backup center, can play one of the other offensive line positions. Maybe we keep Nate Herbig, like I said. And I think we hit free agency for some depth. No splash signings, but I think it's typical we bring in free agency or bring in a couple free agents for some depth. I think we spend a 4th round pick to build our offensive line and continue to build depth. So not the first pick that I have, which is the 2nd rounder, but I think the 2nd pick that I have, which is our 4th rounder, I think you spend on an offensive lineman. Don't know if it's a tackle, don't know if it's a guard, but that's what I would do.
That's significant. Think about it. Last year they spent a 1st and a 2nd on an offensive line, and the year before they spent a 1st. Oh, and I guess last year they spent McCormick?
McCormick was a 3rd or 4th rounder. He
Yeah,
was a little bit later.
So we spent a lot of capital. It makes sense. We don't have to right now.
Yeah. So I think you spend a little bit. Yeah. You spend a second day or no, a third. That'd be a third day. A third day pick on an offensive lineman. So that's what I would do at that position.
My only issue with what you're saying is James Daniels might price him out of a backup role.
He might.
That's the only thing.
He definitely might. I bring him back. I try to bring him back if we can.
Yeah.
So that's what I do with the offensive line. Okay. Offensive line adjacent. Tight ends. You have 2 really good tight ends, I think, in Pat Freiermuth, who we signed to a big deal. And I think Darnell Washington, if we've utilized him a lot more than we have, than we have 2 years ago versus last year or this year. Darnell's a really big body, good blocker. I haven't heard really anything poorly about how Darnell Washington played this year.
No.
Excuse me. So I think we have 2 really good tight ends there. Michael Pruitt is a free agent. Gone. No value, I think, in terms of what Michael Pruitt did. I think Michael Pruitt was brought along by Arthur Smith, who, by the way, I think it's more important here to fire Pat Meyer than it is to fire Arthur Smith. And I don't realistically think that we are going to fire Arthur Smith. If he leaves the Steelers, it's going to be for a head coaching job that he gets. And I don't think that necessarily will happen. But for the sake of this exercise and trying to be a little bit realistic, I think Arthur Smith is staying with us, by the way. So that was my line of thinking there. But I still think we can get rid of some of those guys. So listen, I think we let Michael Pruitt go, and I think you even consider flat out cutting Connor Hayward, or you just move him to tight end 3. We don't need to roster 4 tight ends. We don't need to have Connor Hayward be this weird flex type thing. If you move him to tight end 3 and you keep him there, then that opens up to have that extra 6th wide receiver, 7th wide receiver on our roster, whatever it is. So I think you get rid of Michael Pruitt, and you probably move Connor Hayward to tight end 3, or you cut him and you bring someone else in, whatever it might be, free agent, undrafted free agent, who knows. That's what I would do at the tight end position.
I think you could save about $1.1 million by cutting him, I think.
Not that much.
No.
But I think that his value to the team is not really there.
Yep.
So that's where I sit. Okay, let's talk wide receiver.
Yeah.
I'm going to start here with George Pickens, okay? The conversation with George Pickens right now is that he's at a point where we need to extend him, give him a contract extension, right? I don't love George Pickens. He's an extremely talented wide receiver. Quite frankly, I could say if there was an opportunity to trade him, I would. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think the Steelers are going to do it, but I would hold off on giving him a significant contract extension. I don't think he's proved himself. I think he's got to get a lot more things situated before he can really be this number 1 receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is the talent there? Absolutely. Are the other pieces there? No. So I think George Pickens is going to be our wide receiver 1 next year. I don't think that's going to change, but I don't think he's worthy of a huge extension yet. And I don't think the Steelers are going to move from him or try to, see what his value in the trade market is or anything like that. I think he's staying put. If we look at free agents, Van Jefferson, free agent. You said it. Nothing against this guy, but just no production. He's gone. Yeah. Let him walk out the door. Mike Williams. I really liked him actually, and I'm bummed that Mike Williams is going to go, but we didn't use him, and he's gone. And I think that that's the best move for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Start fresh. So that leaves us with George Pickens, Calvin Austin, who I think is a really great slot wide receiver, Roman Wilson, who we have no idea what the hell this guy does or can do. Is he our wide receiver 2? Does he suck? Is he perpetually hurt? Who knows? So I'm almost going to consider him completely out of the mix here. I don't even know what we have with Roman Wilson. Ben Skoranek, I think we keep. Great special teams player, great 5'6" wide receiver. Really, really a good dude. And I think we cut Scotty Miller. I don't know how much room we save cutting Scotty Miller. He's not a free agent. I think we have him for another year.
They already cut him. He was on the practice squad. They already got rid of him, and he was on the practice squad. So I think they might have re-signed him. I don't know, but he's gone.
Okay. So this is how I address this position. Here comes my splash free agent signing. Similar to you, there's 3 guys that I have on my list that I think could help us out here, and I have one that I think is most likely. I'll start with the 2 guys that I don't think are as likely, and I'm not as high on them. The first would be T. Higgins. I don't think T. Higgins ends up leaving the Bengals. I think they find a way to keep him, or I think somebody really pays him and he gets priced out. I don't think T. Higgins is going to become a Pittsburgh Steeler.
You also hate T. Higgins.
Well, I hate him because he's on the Bengals, but
that's fair.
I don't think that that's going to happen. My second pick, which I think is an awful idea just for the drama that it would bring to this room, but I think is could happen and is a really good wide receiver, Hollywood Brown. Marquise Brown, right now with the Chiefs, he was hurt for most of the season, came back. I think he's active now in the playoffs. Really good wide receiver. I think he's AB's cousin. Am I making that up?
No, yeah, they're related.
Yeah, I think he's related to AB. I don't think he has AB level drama, but if you get what I'm saying from those 2 being connected in some capacity.
I hope not.
I don't know if this is the best move for the Steelers. who I would like the most, and that I think there perhaps is a decent chance that the Steelers could bring on, is Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin, currently with the Buccaneers, I think he's 29 years old. Definitely would get a sizable payday, but I think the Steelers need to recognize that they're going to have to pay someone to fill this gap. This is my big free agent signing, Chris Godwin. I think he is a phenomenal wide receiver in the league. He had some injuries this year. He's had some injuries throughout his career, so maybe that brings his price down a little bit. But Chris Godwin is the type of leader that we need in this wide receiver room. He brings a really strong skill set. He's a wide receiver 2 right now to Mike Evans, and he's very complimentary. I think Chris Godwin is a great player that could really help out this room. So I use that as my free agent signing, and I also draft a wide receiver in the second round. I put my highest pick here towards wide receiver. I know we did that last year with Roman Wilson, but I don't know what we have with Roman Wilson. And I think we can find a day 2 wide receiver early on, and do well with that. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because then what that looks like is you have a wide receiver room of George Pickens, let's hypothetically say Chris Godwin, Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, and a second round draft pick, Ben Skoranek, and maybe you bring in another free agent, right? That's kind of what I look for with this wide receiver room.
I like it. To give you just some background there, I looked up what Chris Godwin's projected contract is. Right now they're saying his market value is like a 3-year, 67 to $70 million
year,
deal.
Right?
So like 22 to 23 a year, which they have the money to do that. And they've shown the desire, at least supposedly, to get Brandon Ayuk, to go get some of these guys. So yeah, no, I agree. This has to be the splash.
I think so. There's quite a few other guys.
Well, and hopefully Roman Wilson actually becomes something, and he will add to the room. But I think it's totally fair for you just to ignore him.
Yeah, and I just think we don't know what we have in him yet, right? I think that's a really fair assessment. So that's where I sit with wide receiver. Okay, running back. We're almost to the splashiest. Listen, this might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion here, and probably disagreeing with what many Steelers fans think. I would re-sign Najee. I would re-sign Najee if you don't get priced out on him. And I think you bring him and both Jalen back. I think Jalen's a restricted free agent this year. I don't know what the terminology, I don't know how different it is. I guess that means we have like initial rights or something like that.
I think I think we might be able to match any offer that he gets.
Something like that. So I think, you make a significant effort in bringing both of those two backs back. Cordell Patterson is gone. And I think you spend a 6th round draft pick, we don't have a 6th round draft pick. I think you spend one of your 7th round draft picks on a running back. I don't think that, what was the guy's name from Arizona State? Cam Scadaboo or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't think, based on the success that he had in the playoffs, that he would fall that low or that late. But I did see that projections had him towards the end of the running back class. And that guy, I think, emulates what a Pittsburgh Steeler could be. Nonetheless, I really, really think we make an effort in signing both Najee and Jalen, and we draft a 7th rounder to round out that room. It's a little bit of personal preference, but I think you have two complementary backs that work for this team. And I argue that you look at what happened to a team like the Dallas Cowboys that thought they had everything in the world with Tony Pollard, and they let Ezekiel Elliott walk away, and they shit the bed with just Tony Pollard. And I think you lose a lot when you think that your guy in Jaylen Warren is automatically an RB1. I think Jaylen Warren has a lot of talent and potential, and that's not discrediting anything about him. But I think that there is something to be said about Najee and what he can bring to this team. I think that the team and the coaching has seen, if you look at kind of how things have shifted over the last, season, particularly like the last back half of the season, and how it's kind of been a lot closer to a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
That's kind of a David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs type thing in Detroit, and that works immensely well for them. And not to make a Penn State reference, but it's a Katron Allen, Nick Singleton type thing. Like these these backs I think are really complementary, and so I hope and I would love to have us keep both of them.
Yeah, so I'm just looking it up here. They are rumoring Najee's probably worth 9 million a year, which seems like a lot, but I don't disagree with your comment. And then I can't find anything on Jalen Warren, but he'll probably get something less than that, I would assume.
Hmm.
So no,
Hmm.
I like that. I feel good about that.
Okay, let's move to quarterback because this is where the magic
So
happens.
wait, you got to set the stage. We have zero active, which actually we have zero. I think we have zero running backs too on the roster
Technically,
going into next. I'm sorry, we have Cordero Patterson on the roster going into
yeah,
next season.
which we
Okay,
cut by the way. I don't know if I fully specified that, but we cut
no,
him.
you did not. Okay, so we
He's
have
gone.
zero quarterbacks going into what you're going to do here,
We have three free agent quarterbacks. That's correct. Russell
and
Wilson,
and
Justin
Skylar
Fields,
Thompson.
correct, and Kyle Allen. So Skylar Thompson plays into this. So let me get there.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, he plays into like the third piece of the puzzle that I was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah. Go
go
ahead.
after.
Let's hear it.
Okay, I think the very first thing that you do is you sign Justin Fields. I signed Justin Fields to a 2-year deal, and I tell him, you want to be a QB1. This is your chance to go be a QB1. And if Justin Fields brings the Steelers to a 4-13 record, you answered your question, and you have a top 10 pick now, and you can go draft a quarterback first overall in the 2026 draft. I think Justin Fields, and sounds like Mike Tomlin is in agreement. I think Justin Fields showed that he has the skills and the potential to be a starting quarterback in the league, and particularly for the Steelers.
Yeah.
One thing that stood out to me is Mike Tomlin acknowledged, and if you look at all the teams that are left in the playoffs right now, they all have a mobile quarterback. Mike Tomlin acknowledged that that's the way that the league is moving. And what did he do? In week 6, he moved away from his mobile quarterback to go to Russell Wilson, who took the Steelers 6-6 or whatever. I have a problem with that. And so for that reason, I signed Justin Fields. He has the starting job, and Russell Wilson leaves. You let Russell Wilson walk away. We can dive way into the likelihood of whether or not both of these things are going to happen. I think there's a pretty decent likelihood that the Steelers sign Justin Fields. I think there's a decent likelihood that Russell Wilson could go out the door. But from what I'm seeing, it sounds like he wants to stay. Justin Fields wants to stay. All that's talk, all that's smoke and mirrors. We don't actually know what's going to happen. But that's what I would do with those two players. I keep Justin Fields. I let Russell Wilson go. Let me round this out, and then I'll get your thoughts. With that, I actually would re-sign Kyle Allen. You can get him probably dirt cheap. I know nothing about Kyle Allen. I don't even remember what he did in the preseason. But look, I think there's value in having a backup quarterback be consistent from year to year, and particularly with a guy like Justin Fields, who he might have some rapport with. Right, he might have a relationship with Justin, might be helpful. And I think that's something we should do. Now maybe Skylar Thompson was brought in to kind of replace Kyle Allen, and we just kind of let Kyle Allen walk out the door if there's no value there. If that's not the case, I had said sign Justin Fields, sign Kyle Allen, and then you sign a free agent or an undrafted free agent to be your third string. And we did just that with Skylar Thompson. So I think our quarterback room could be Justin Fields, Kyle Allen, Skylar Thompson, or it could be Justin Fields, Skylar Thompson, and then maybe an undrafted free agent.
So you're going just all in Justin Fields, give him a full year and see what he does.
I am, yeah. I think he's deserving of it, right? I don't think he got fucked over this year. I think he kind of understood what was going to happen going into the year, but
Yeah.
I think that how soon did it take for us to say we want Justin Fields back? Like 2 or 3 games into Russ, like we started, hey, like Russ is getting hit a lot, not very mobile. 4 or 5
Terrible
games
in the
in,
red zone.
right, 4 or 5 games in, we're like, okay, let's at least get him in for some snaps. And then we saw what we saw towards, the end of the season. Justin Fields makes a team respect the Steelers in a way that they were not respected this year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that we need to do. We haven't had a true quarterback like that since Cordell Stewart, with the skill set of a mobile quarterback. Yeah, we had
Mike
Byron
Vick.
Leftwich and Mike Vick for a little bit for some backup quarterback action. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, like the Steelers have not had a full dual threat mobile quarterback since Cordell Stewart, and Justin Fields is dude. He's big. He's 6'3". He's got a great arm. Like we saw that. Yeah, he has some things he needs to clean up and work on, but I would be really bummed to go see Justin Fields become a starter on,
Yeah.
you name it, Team X elsewhere, on the New Orleans Saints, on whatever. I'd be bummed to see that. I think Justin Fields deserves a second round with this team. And, we said all that we had to say about Mike Tomlin, but I think Justin Fields and Mike Tomlin have a good relationship, and I think Mike Tomlin has faith in Justin Fields. So that's what I would like to see at the quarterback.
Well, Justin Fields is only going to be 26. So he's
Yeah.
only going to be 26 next season. And if you look at it, you can sign him to a backup level deal. I mean, that is what they're calculating his market value is $9 million a year. And that's reminiscent of a 1 year, $10 million deal for Sam Darnold this year, or like what we did with Mitch Trubisky. I think it was like a 2 year, $18 or $20 million deal they did. You could sign him to one of those cheap deals, and you're not really putting that much into the quarterback room again, and you're not tied to anything really either. You could sign him to a 2 year deal, but you don't have to. And so I do actually agree with that. I don't really know what else we're going to do. What are we going to go pay Sam Darnold for like $25-30 million after he just collapsed in the playoffs and at the end of the year? I don't know. And like, would he really come to us? Probably not. So there's no quarterbacks in the and honestly, they're saying Sam Darnold could get $40 million. Is his value. I mean, so do we really have to jeopardize the team like that? That doesn't make a lot of sense. There's not really any quarterbacks in the draft that we could get, especially late in the first. Yeah, I'm 100% on board with that. We've been saying how much we want Justin Fields to play for weeks now and all season basically, and why not? Give him a prove-it year. I love what you let it off with. Give him a prove-it year, and if it sucks, you're in line for a pretty high draft pick the next year.
And you know what, you have an answer to a question, which is one of the hardest things to do for the Steelers, is get those questions answered. And I think you can play this game, right? Who else would you want as your starting quarterback that you could get? Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Taylor Heineke, Marcus Mariota, Drew Lock, Jameis Winston, Mac Jones. Like, these are the guys that are on the market right now. And Russell Wilson's in there too, but
and people are going to say Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, and I don't like. Again, they're not going to move the needle. That's just Russell Wilson all over again. And to be honest with you, out of those three, Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, I'd probably want Aaron Rodgers out of the three of them.
Oh, I wouldn't.
Which is crazy to say, but like I don't see positive with any of them. But like that's the thing. You're going to go pay these guys more than they're worth because of their name, because of their legacy. And you're not going to get anything out of it. Whereas with Justin Fields, it's no risk. It's only reward. I mean, like it's low risk, high reward, I guess is what I would say. If he sucks, like you said, you get a high draft pick and a better quarterback draft, or he's really good and becomes your franchise guy at 26 years old. Guys getting drafted, Bo Nix, I think, got drafted at 25. I mean, we drafted Kenny Pickett at 24. Like, you can be a franchise quarterback at 26 years old. And so, yeah, I'm 100% on board. I actually didn't think that was flashy. I think that's a good, sound decision, to be honest with you. There's no risk in it. I mean, I really don't think there's any risk. And give him a chance. Open up the offense, take the training wheels off, and see what he can do. I love it.
That's where I am. I don't know if it was 12 steps. I don't know if it was 10 steps, but
it was good.
That's my patented way how I fix.
So you're really only changing the wide receiver room, and even that you're not.
I think
yeah.
No, I think. Well, I mean, from a starter's perspective, yeah, I think the wide receiver room is what would change the most, right? And quarterback, you see what happens at quarterback with Justin Fields, right? Like, that's certainly a change. And yeah, the offensive line stays the same, assuming you have Troy Fautanu healthy and you move Broderick Jones back to his position. But yeah, that's where I sit.
I like it. And you, excuse me, you didn't mention, let Arthur Smith call a game. Let him be him. And don't have Mike Tomlin breathing down his neck telling him, I don't want to throw the ball.
Assuming that's what we didn't see this year, then yes.
Right.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm on board. I like it. You brought some optimism. I think we could do that.
I think like the whole point of this is like, this is reasonable. What could
I
happen?
thought it was reasonable.
Both of what we suggested, right? So,
Yeah.
and if these things happen, then I'll be excited. I'll be a little bit excited heading into the 2025 season.
Me too.
I think with that, it's time to
We've talked long enough.
yeah, this is our longest episode, right? Over an hour and 15 minutes,
Yeah.
75 minutes. So let's wrap it up here. It's been a good season for us, bad season for the Steelers.
Yeah.
But it's fun as always, and yeah, maybe we'll talk draft at some point. We'll talk some of this other stuff. Hopefully, we have some changes, coaching changes, player changes, cuts, signings. Who knows? But we'll get there when we get there.
And we'll at some point go back and review the season, all of our, the props we did and all our balls of steel and all that. We'll do that at some point, but for now,
Whenever we've digested it.
Yeah, we're gonna take a break from the Steelers and not be as depressed. So
nice healthy break.
But this was fun.
So we'll be back when we're back, and we'll leave it at that.
I like it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sticking with us this season, and as always, next season, right? 2025. We'll look forward above and beyond, and we'll see what happens. So thank you guys as always. We appreciate it, and talk to you soon.
Thanks everyone. Peace.